Thank you. To acknowledge country, I would like to begin by acknowledging the Wurundjeri people, the traditional custodians of the land on which we're joining from today, and pay my respects to their elders past and present. I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples in attendance. I'd also like to acknowledge Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people's commitment to innovation and technology that continue to this day, a commitment we deeply respect and share at auDA. Just to introduce myself and my colleague today, my name, as I said, is Glenn. I'm recently joined auDA, having worked in the university sector for the last 12 or 11 or so years. And prior to that, I was with IBM for 27 years. So I have a strong background in research, development, and technology. I'd also like to introduce my colleague, Ricky Andrews, who is our Senior Manager of Public Benefit here at auDA. And I'll just hand over to Ricky to say a few words about herself.
Thanks so much, Glenn. So I've worked in the philanthropic sector for over 20 years. I've worked for a number of grant-making organisations that might be familiar to you all on the call. So organisations like the Potter Foundation, like the Victor Smorgon family, the Gandal Foundation, and Equity Trustees. So I bring a broad range of experience and understanding of grant seeking and grant making. And here at auDA, we look after both the community grant program and a number of other grant programs that we offer. So looking forward to sharing this information with you today about the community grant program. So thank you all for joining us.
Thank you, Ricky. So I imagine most of you who are here have probably had some familiarity with auDA, of kind of probably crawled around the website to understand a little bit about the organisation. But just briefly, auDA is an organisation that manages the .au domain name system in Australia. And without getting too technical, when any of us are using the internet and we're going to different websites or social media, in the background is the domain name system, which actually connects from things like www.auda.org.au. That's our, that's the URL to get to auDA. It connects into a IP address, which then allows you from your browser or your phone or wherever you are around the world to connect to auDA's website. And that domain name system is one of the critical pieces of internet technology that enables the extraordinary impact of the internet worldwide. Here in Australia, auDA manages what we call domains under management. So there are about 4.3 million domain names here in Australia that end in .au. And as the chart mentions here, the domain name system, as I talked about a little earlier, allows us to send emails, get to websites, use our social media, and so on. auDA is a not-for-profit organisation, been around for many years. It's endorsed by the Australian government to operate .au for the benefit of all Australians. And we also get endorsement from the organisation called ICANN, which is the worldwide sort of governing body for the internet. And we support the needs of Australian internet users by making sure that we deliver both a secure and a trusted .au domain name space. And that's really important because you can be confident when you're using the internet in Australia and you're connecting to a website that ends in .au, that we understand who that organisation is. We can provide that there's a registry of public information about that organisation, and that the governance work and the work we do behind the scenes means that organisations in Australia and people who are interacting with them can be confident about the work they're doing on the internet. We just recently revised what we call auDA's purpose, and I really like this. It says connecting Australians to an open internet with trust and confidence. And in underpinning that is a new 4-year strategy that we've announced, and you can find that on our website. And you'll see in that strategy that there is a lot of discussion around the impact and the work that auDA does to support the community. And that's broadly right across Australia, helping people to interact with and work with the internet in that sort of notion of having a lot of trust and confidence. And the purpose, therefore, of the community grant program is to support this notion of auDA working with Australians, connecting Australians to an open internet with trust and confidence. So that's a little bit of background. Now get into the details of the webinar, and particularly the details of the community grant program. So the agenda for the rest of this session today is I'll hand over to Ricky in a moment. She's going to take us through the details of the community grant, key information and dates. Then Ricky and I are going to do a fireside chat. We don't have a fire, so it'll be a virtual fireside chat. And I'll ask Ricky a bunch of questions about what actually makes a good auDA community grant application, and then we'll open it up for questions from attendees. So I'll now hand over to Ricky.
Thanks so much, Glenn. So all of the information that we'll be sharing today is on the auDA website in the guidelines and the FAQs. So I encourage everybody after the webinar, if you haven't done it already, please ensure that you visit the website and that you've accessed that information that is there for you. So the auDA Community Grant Program has actually been around for quite some time, and we've been able to contribute almost $6 million to well over 200 projects since 2006. So we've invested in a lot of great digital innovation and inclusion, and largely that funding has actually come from the auDA Foundation, which is a separate legal charitable trust. And in 2026, once again, the funding will come from the auDA Foundation. So key things that you need to know, the guidelines are currently available, but applications will open on the 1st of August and close on the 31st of August. So in the guidelines, there is the link to the application platform. So make sure that you have bookmarked that and be ready to open that on the 1st of August. It's open to new projects or strategic expansions or additions to existing projects, but we won't fund ongoing delivery of an existing service or program. So have a good think about the kind of project that's really going to deliver some strategic impact for your organisation and your sector. We want to fund projects that actually can be delivered well within 12 months. And so the grant activity period is the 1st of January 2027 to the 31st of December 2027. So think about projects that you want to test, you want to explore, you want to implement something, but also that you'll give yourself enough time to actually be able to measure and see the impact of how you've delivered that project. And overall, we will be granting 15 grants. That's every successful applicant will receive $50,000. And so there's a total of $750,000 to be delivered this year. So who's eligible to apply? You must be a registered not-for-profit organisation with the ACNC, the Australian Charities and Not-for-Profit Commission. And this includes universities and research institutions. So you have to be registered in Australia as a company or an incorporated association. And you must be confident that you've got the resources and the capability required to deliver your project. And when we're talking about capability, we're thinking about, in particular, your digital capability to actually deliver a project. And in our second webinar, which will be held on the 11th of August, we're actually going to be talking more about digital capability, and we'll have our colleagues from Info Exchange talking about how you can be sure and that your organisation is going to be digitally capable and able to deliver on the project you'd like to put forward to auDA. So the types of projects that are eligible, they must focus on digital inclusion and or digital innovation. Now, in the guidelines, we've got our definitions of digital inclusion, and the way we look at it and what we're going to be funding are things that enable communities to improve access and use digital technologies effectively for their stakeholders. And digital innovation is developing new digital tools or delivering information or services using digital tools that are novel for your sector or stakeholders that materially support one or more of the priority focus areas. Now, our priority focus areas this year are rural, regional and remote Australians, Australians living with disability, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, and young Australians from 12 to 24. And each year we do assess whether these priority focus areas are still the areas that we should be supporting. And we refer to things like the Australian Digital Inclusion Index to see who are those population groups that are at most risk of digital exclusion and who will therefore benefit from the investment of the auDA Community Grant Program. For a project to be eligible, you have to have a total project budget over $50,000, and we want your organisation to contribute at least 10% of the grant amount into that total project budget. Now, that could be a financial contribution or it could be an in-kind contribution. We want projects to be strategic and innovative. So we're not going to fund requests for provision of basic IT equipment, such as laptops or devices for your stakeholders, or general IT training. And if you look at our FAQs on the website, you'll see some fabulous links to organisations that deliver amazing training on digital skills that are freely available. And also provide avenues where you can source IT equipment such as laptops and smartphones for your stakeholders. And the final point there about what projects are eligible is that your request absolutely must be community-led and supported. So what do you need in preparation for your application? What are we going to be wanting you to upload on the Giving Data platform? We want to see an executive summary and then a more detailed project description. What are you going to do? Who's going to be involved? How do you plan on rolling it out? We want the project plan and timeline, so a really simple work plan that demonstrates that you've thought about your project and how it's going to roll out over the 12 months. We want you to put forward your expected outputs and outcomes and the possible impact you'd like to see. We'd like to see a simple project budget, and we have a budget template on the Giving Data platform that you can refer to and use, and that will actually outline the variety of items that we are happy to see in a project budget. But just to confirm for you that the auDA Community Grant Program is happy to fund things like salaries, like marketing and communication costs, administration costs, a number of other things that you might need to actually effectively deliver a project. And most important of all, we really would like to see in your application letters of support. So we want to ensure that you have in-kind or financial contribution from project-related stakeholders, and a letter of support will confirm that for us. So applications are submitted via the Giving Data platform. Those of you that have applied to funding colleagues such as the Ian Potter Foundation or the Paul Ramsay Foundation will have used the Giving Data platform before. The link to the application is in the Community Grant Guidelines and will open on the 1st of August. So what reporting and other conditions do you need to keep in mind before you make your application? So a progress report will be due on the 31st of July of 2027, and then a final report, including noting how you've performed against your deliverables, your outputs and your outcomes, that will be due on the 31st of January 2028. Conditions that you should definitely keep in mind is that the grant funding is to be used exclusively for the successful project. So what you've put in your application, what you've put down in your budget is what you should be using the grant funding for over the 12 months. You must spend money on the activities within Australia to benefit Australians. And we do ask that you acknowledge the auDA contribution in any published project materials. And then for the full list of conditions, of course, go to the guidelines. So they're the key things to remember.
All right. Thank you, Ricky. So as we mentioned earlier, all the slides and the recording will be made available, and you will all hopefully have access to all the documentation. What I'd like to do now is just have a bit more of an informal chat with Ricky about the program. As I mentioned earlier, I'm new to auDA. I've only been here 6 weeks, so I've sort of been coming up to speed on the community grant program. And I had a bunch of questions which I sort of wrote down and thought I'd run through those with Ricky now, and hopefully that will be helpful for participants. And then, of course, as we mentioned, we'll have some time during the webinar to finish with some questions from participants or attendees. So, Ricky, perhaps my first question to you is, for you to describe what makes a project compelling to auDA. Particularly, you've seen a bunch of projects that have come through previous grant programs. What's some examples, or what's a compelling project look like?
Thanks, Glenn. So one of the key things I should share with people is that we do have an external panel that helps with the review of all the applications, and the panel is made up of people with lived experience related to the priority focus populations that we want to support. So when we're looking at applications, when the panel are reviewing things, we're looking at how does it align with auDA's wish to get more people online, and particularly underserved populations online. The panel will be looking for what is the impact on a project for those particular cohorts that they represent and the knowledge that they have in those areas. And panel members will also be looking for things that are digitally innovative, but realistic and practical as well. So we want to be sure that a project is going to support people to get online, is actually highly relevant and highly wanted by those particular population cohorts, and we have our external panel to help us with that. But also that they are practical and realistic, and that are going to be readily delivered, and that we can see how they're going to be rolled out. The other thing that we really look for is not simply that it will be a good project, but that there are steps in train or ideas there of how the work is going to be shared with relevant stakeholders. So it's not simply enough to have a great project that you're going to be able to deliver. We want to be sure that everyone in your sector, your stakeholders, everybody who needs to be aware of the work that you're doing comes across that work, because we want more and more people to be able to benefit from what we've funded.
Thank you. Are there examples on our website of previous projects that people would be able to have a look at, particularly those who this might be their first time that they're putting in a proposal?
Yes, so on the website where you'll be able to find the community grant guidelines, we also have links to the previous recipients from 2021 onwards. And I would recommend having a look at the grant recipients from the last 2 years, in particular, 2024 and 25, because we made some slight tweaks to the guidelines and our FAQs, and so you'll see examples of projects that are more aligned with that notion of how do we get more people online, and how do we ensure as many people as possible become aware of the work that's being done by our grant recipients.
Thank you. So during your presentation, you mentioned that projects must be community-led or supported. Are you able to elaborate a little bit more on what we mean by community-led and community-supported?
We want to see projects, Glenn, where it's really clear that the community have said this is an important piece of work. we think it's really valuable for our community, our particular population cohort, and we think that the grant applicant is the best placed organisation to actually deliver this project with us. But also with the letters of support, your community colleagues, your stakeholders are actually saying, we believe in this project so much that we're willing to contribute our financial or our in-kind support to ensure that this project rolls out in the best way possible. And some really good examples of in-kind support from community stakeholders are things like we're going to ensure our network is fully aware of the project and is aware of the opportunities where you might be able to get involved in a workshop or a survey or a pilot or whatever it might be. So I strongly encourage everybody to think about who are their partners for a particular project and being ready to get that letter of support from their partners.
Thank you. So you've obviously received and reviewed hundreds of community grant applications in your time at auDA. So what are some of the common pitfalls that you've seen in what would otherwise be really good applications?
I would definitely say, Glenn, not having strong letters of support that truly demonstrate that it is a community-led project and that stakeholders are there to support and participate in the project. It's absolutely fabulous if you're your local MP, but they are not necessarily a community stakeholder for a particular project. So I would encourage you to be thinking about active partners that are really going to help you roll out your project and be thinking of those letters of support. The other thing is projects where it doesn't appear that the applicant is aware of what's going on in the broader sector in this space around digital inclusion and digital innovation. So as working in this space, I try to keep very up to date with what's happening in the fields of digital inclusion and digital innovation. I talk to lots of colleagues in this space. I talk to other funders in this space. And so if an application comes through and it's for a project that I know funding has been provided by philanthropic colleagues already, or it's part of a government rollout, it might not be something that cuts through because it's not being aware of the investment that's already taken place there. So make sure you're aware of what's going on. Have a look at many of the resources that we've provided in the FAQs so that you can be sure that you're up to date with what's happening with digital inclusion and digital innovation as well.
Thank you. In the criteria for the community grants, we talk about sustainable projects, and just wondering if you'd be able to sort of expand a little bit on what does a sustainable project look like?
So there's two angles to sustainability that we look for. So one is sustainability as it's defined in our grant guidelines. And that's because auDA has a desire to apply an environmental lens to our community grant program. So we want to see that any projects that we support will have a positive impact on the environment. And that might be considerations around climate change, around water usage, around circular economy, around recycling, etc. And every organisation can actually think about its impact in that respect. So you might be an actual environmental organisation, and so therefore it's quite straightforward that you're delivering on sustainability. But for other organisations, it might be just reflecting on, does the project that you want to implement, is it actually saving time or fuel usage, or is it improving other environmental outcomes for stakeholders? The other aspect of sustainability is around, if you as the applicant invest in this particular project, what's going to happen after the grant period? So is the project actually delivering sustainability as in business sustainability for your organisation? Is it investing in a new way of doing things so that you can be more efficient in getting knowledge and information out to your stakeholders? So is it actually developing something that might lead to revenue for your organisation? So that helps you with your operational sustainability and financial sustainability. So it's something, it's in the selection criteria that you'll see that sustainability is an important aspect of what we're looking for in our applications.
Okay, perfect. So I've two more questions for you. Second last one is, what kind of impact does auDA are we looking for from successful applicants or applicants projects?
So the key thing we want to see is that more underserved communities are able to access what they need and when they need it via the internet. So we really want to be able to see applications from organisations that show we're going to help people get online and access what they need online. So the other thing is that we want to be able to see the ways that you're going to be measuring that, and particularly around the aspect of digital inclusion. If you've read the FAQs yet, you will see that auDA has actually supported the Melbourne Social Equity Institute, which is based at the University of Melbourne, to develop a range of digital inclusion indicators, which you can use for your evaluation of your impact. So these are free resources. You can go to the Seed Kit online and get more information about how you can consistently and easily measure digital inclusion. So we want to see impact from organisations where they show that they've put some thought into the things that they're going to measure, knowing that these indicators that have been developed by Seed Kit are measures that the whole sector that is looking at digital inclusion thinks is important. So the other aspect around impact is we want to be sure that you are sharing the outcomes of your project via the internet as much as you can. And so that's not simply having something available on your website. It's thinking about some of your digital communications to ensure that any relevant stakeholders can actually learn about what you have done and perhaps connect with you, replicate it, reference it, develop policy related to it. So that's another way of thinking about the impact, is where is your work going to go and how do you ensure that stakeholders are going to be aware of it?
Thanks, Ricky. Last question for you, and thank you for your sort of insights today. I think will be very useful for people. So my last question for you is, what's the one message you hope everyone will take away from the presentation today in terms of really compelling community grant?
I would encourage everybody to have a really close read of the resources that we've made available for you. So our guidelines and our FAQs, and not be afraid to actually put forward any exciting idea or community-led idea that you think is important for your stakeholders. So we do keep abreast of what's going on in the fields of digital inclusion and digital innovation, but we can't be across everything. And so we welcome your fresh and innovative ideas, and we encourage everybody to have a go if you think it's going to be relevant and valuable for your stakeholders. So, and of course, if you're not quite sure, then please do use the public benefit at auda.org.au email address, and you can pop a quick query through there, and we'll be able to respond and let you know how to put your application forward. So, thanks so much, Glenn.
Brilliant. All right. We're now going to move on to the Q&A session for attendees. So if people have got questions, then please feel free to put them into the Q&A section, part of the Zoom here. There is one question that's already sitting in there, and I think, Ricky, this one's definitely going to be for you. A wages consultancy / project manager costs eligible?
Thanks for that question. Yes, absolutely. So if a physical resource, a person, is essential for you to roll this project out, then yes, it is eligible to include that in your budget. I would encourage you always to be thinking, is this actually an opportunity to develop expertise in-house? So to give an opportunity to an existing staff member, but otherwise, if you do need to take on an additional resource, then yes, that is eligible.
Thank you. Next question, and I'll read them out just so we've got them recorded as well. From Liz Brannigan, who thanks us for our session. She's supporting Emerge Australia, the peak body for Australians living with ME/CFS and long COVID. Our community is disabled and often bedbound. Emerge's online service already provide invaluable support for this underserved community. What we really need is a new website to get knowledge and info out in the community, help people navigate and access support. Would this potentially be funded under this program?
Thanks for your question, Liz. So in our FAQs, we do actually talk about how generally we don't fund the development of a website or an app unless there is particular accessibility features that are required for your stakeholders. So I would encourage you to look at the FAQs, and then if you think that you might want to raise that directly, then please send through an email to the public benefit email address.
Thanks. Next question is, and one I hopefully can possibly answer, is can PhD students apply for this grant? And I think there's no reason, Ricky can correct me, that PhD students wouldn't be eligible. Having come from a university and part of my role was leading the research at UTS, PhD students applying for grants would be fantastic. You'd need to make sure, of course, that you had support from your supervisors. And they often, a PhD supervisor, academic, will generally have an enormous amount of experience in applying for these sorts of grants. So I would encourage you to, obviously work with your supervisor on that as well. Does that sound reasonable, Ricky?
Yes, absolutely encourage anybody from universities to look at the grant opportunity. Please keep in mind that each university is only able to put forward one application. And so what you'll find in most universities is either the research office or the advanced team will be managing an EOI process so that they can put forward the best application into the program. So whoever asks that question, if you reach out to your research office or advancement or giving team, and they'll be able to provide you a bit more information about the process. But I encourage you to perhaps be first in, best dressed,
And I was
maybe,
going to say that
depending on how they run it.
getting quick and put a
Yeah.
compelling case forward and make sure you've got a really good project. I think that's be fantastic. And again, having come from the university sector, deeply encouraging PhD students to apply for grants. That's fantastic. Next question from, I'm not going to do a very good job of pronouncing the name, Bedrich. I hope that's okay. Confirming that applications from universities are limited to one application across the institute, or whether auDA will consider one application from individual schools or faculties within the university. Ricky, you just addressed that, but is there any situation where that might be a variation or in general?
No. So last year we introduced the requirement that only one application could come forward from each university.
Yeah. And again, if I can just chime in with my background in the university sector, part of the role of the research office in situations like this is often to help where there might be a couple of applications. And I've seen examples where people actually come together within the university and combine their work forces to put put together one single application. If that's another way of approaching that.
Yeah, and I would support that. So cross-faculty applications that show that you're thinking about a number of angles to an issue are always well regarded and great to see.
Awesome. So I think there's 4 questions that have come through, and they've all been excellent questions. And thank you for attendees who submitted them. We haven't got any further questions at the moment, so I might just wait that sort of nervous 15 seconds or 30 seconds of silence, or me just prattling on to see if there's any other questions turn up. So, of course, as Ricky mentioned, if people do have more detailed questions, that are very specific to their particular organisation, or you've got an idea and you want to sort of get some guidance as to how that might resonate as a community grant, feel free to connect with us through the email we mentioned earlier, and we'll be able to provide a timely response. So, given that there's no more questions coming forward, I might just close this off by moving into the next chart, which just shows. Oh, sorry. Having said that, there's 2 more questions coming. Oh no, that's a hit. Sorry, I'll stop. I have got a question from Chris Mills. Thank you for the webinar. Revisiting app development. If the app development of an app addresses specific accessibility requirements for a target cohort, would that be considered? Ricky.
Thanks for the question, Chris. So, yes, if you have a look at our FAQs, we do support app development if there's a specific accessibility requirement. Now, an example of that would be an app that we funded a couple of years ago that was with regards to food and nutrition information that was being delivered in a specific Indigenous language. So the tool was it was a very typical tool as an app. But because of this population in very remote Australia, high usage of smartphones and high usage of the local language or a couple of the local languages, and that's why we were happy to support the app development in that instance.
Okay, and have 2 more questions that have popped in, which is fantastic. Is it permitted, this one's from Matthew Hana, is it permitted or preferable for other grants or funding sources to be included in the project funding? And I'm pretty sure the answer to that one is yes, we would definitely support and encourage that, because if our support and funding can be amplified by combining with other funding, then that obviously means you'd be able to have even greater impact. So correct me if I'm wrong there, Ricky, or you're comfortable with that?
Absolutely, but what we would ask is that the other funding sources are confirmed. So we wouldn't look as favourably upon a grant request where, say, if it's a $200,000 project and you want $50,000 from auDA and the other $150,000 is actually subject to funding decisions by government or philanthropic funders. So we'd like to ensure that when we approve a grant, that it is actually the project's going to be able to get underway as of the 1st of January 2027.
And actually, just while I've got you, Ricky, you reminded me of another point that we were discussing recently, and might just be worth reiterating, is that we do want that funding to be expended in that 12-month period. Is that
Yes,
correct?
absolutely. So the project is to be rolled out, the funding to be used in that 12-month period.
And I know from my university past that that's often a challenge for organisations. Put a lot of work into getting a grant, and then needing to get the resources on board and get the work done. So just wanted to make that point.
Yes, but that's sorry to interrupt, Glenn, but it's one of the reasons why we actually also ask for a project plan or a work plan, so that you've really thought about what are those first steps that you need to undertake with your project. So do you need to do recruiting? Will you have enough time? Have you got someone ready to go to take on that role? And so really think about, are you able to roll this project out in the 12-month period? Are you able to actually use all of the funding that you've been provided in that 12-month period and deliver the impact that you'd like to see? So,
Cool. And then, well, I won't say hopefully last, but currently last question is, does the project, does it have to be a direct digital project, or will developmental projects be considered?
I'm not 100% sure
What a
what
developmental
yes.
project is,
So
yeah.
if it's about developing a digital tool, so that would probably sit under our interest around digital innovation. And so to develop a new way of delivering is something that we would look at. But you'd really want to be sure that you had your evidence and your community support that says this new way of doing things is going to be useful, valuable, and is in the right place and the right time. So I hope that answers the question for that person. You're welcome to send an email through with a little bit more detail, and we can provide a little, perhaps a bit more information or a bit better response.
All right. Well, look, I'll go for another trial close to see whether we've got any more questions. It doesn't look like any are coming through. So why don't we move just to the last chart or two, and we can close out. So just some key dates for everybody to remember. July, the community grants are open. The guidelines are linked in there. Applications open on the 1st of August. There'll be a further webinar on the 11th of August. And we're doing that with Info Exchange and some previous community grant recipients. So that will be that could be useful as well. And then applications close at the end of August, 31st of August. And then finally, some additional resources. As we sort of mentioned earlier, auDA has been doing a bunch of work to help communities. So there's some nice resources here, a link into how to build a website for your small business or non-profit, how to set up a custom email address with the .au domain name. The annual research report on digital lives of Australians is a very nice piece of work. And then there's also some future scenarios research report, which goes through. We did some work about a year and a half ago where we got some people to help us think about potential scenarios, and that this makes quite interesting and somewhat challenging reading. Feels like, in a sense, when I read those prior to joining auDA, these three scenarios, it feels like we're kind of in the middle of all three of them combined at the moment. All right. And then finally, I think that is a thank you for everybody to attend today. Thanks to colleagues from auDA for helping to put this on. Thank you very much for the participants, attendees today. We're looking forward to getting some really compelling proposals from you. And just to complete, the email address is publicbenefit@auda.org.au. And thank you very much. And we'll call the meeting to a close.
Thanks, everyone.